I think the best way to describe Andor Season 2 is a season of two halves. The first 6 episodes were quite a slug to get through. Although the second block of 3 were a slight improvement over the first 3, the season doesn't really get going until about episode 6 or 7. I mean, the 3 episode arcs did get better as the season went on, but it nearly lost me, especially with that silly opening of Andor stealing the prototype TIE fighter. That was very reminiscent of the scene from The Force Awakens when Finn and Poe steal the TIE fighter to escape. It really didn't do much for me. And then Andor gets captured and spends the remainder of the 3 episodes as a prisoner to the most incompetent rebels I've ever seen. There's a lot of guff in those early episodes with that multi-day wedding at Mon Mothma's gaff that was just incredibly boring. And I felt that it offered very little to the overall story. And then there was that scene with Lieutenant Kroll and Bix that did demonstrate that this is not Star Wars for kids. I mean, it does offer to demonstrate the pure brutality of the Empire, with officers in positions of authority abusing said authority, and it gives the rebels another reason to rebel. The next 3 episode arc was an improvement, but it was at this stage where I nearly gave up. The Second World War allegory was quite on the nose, complete with actual French resistance fighters, which, for the most part, I actually really liked. But it took me a while to watch the next couple of blocks of episodes, as I felt that I was pretty much done with the series at that point. But a mate at work said to me I should just carry on and watch it because it does get better, and I'm really glad that I took his advice. And it's in episode 6 where the series really does start to take off. I once again found myself invested in Cyril and his relationship with Dedra Meero, even his overbearing and irritating mother. I also found myself getting really invested in the character of Clea, who I actually think was probably the best character of the whole series. Andor and Bix's relationship was quite complex in Season 2, and I did actually feel that Cassian himself was quite underwhelming as a character. I suppose most of his arc kind of took place in Season 1, and we all know where it ends for him at the end of Rogue One, and I guess in Season 2, he just acts as a small part of a larger jigsaw. Bix's spiral into a dark place due to the trauma that she suffered with the torture in Season 1 meant that her only release was with drugs, until she took matters into her own hands, effectively bringing her arc to a conclusion, which I think paid off quite well, to be honest. And Mon Mothma finally publicly stands up against the Empire in the Senate. This was something that I think should have been done much earlier on in the season. It felt like it was done for convenience because it had to kind of tie up with the events in Rogue One. And there was one character that I was actually quite looking forward to being introduced in this season, and that was K2SO. And his introduction felt a little bit rushed, and also only added in purely to line up again with Rogue One. I mean, the droid needs to be in there, and the partnership with him and Cassian was required, but I guess that's the problem with prequels. You can't stray away too far from the beaten track because A has to connect with B, etc, etc, but it is good to have Alan Tudyk back in the role. I would have preferred K2SO to have been introduced into the season much sooner, with more focus on how they acquire and reprogram the droid, but to be honest, that's probably just a bit of a nitpick. One thing that I really did like in this series was that the Empire propaganda machine is in full flow, with the newscasters creating a narrative to the masses in favour of the Empire, but the massacre in Gorman orchestrated by Meero and Major Patagaz, with their manipulation of Cyril complete, the real turning point against the Empire and the unveiling of the Empire as the galaxy's true evil is episode 7 with the massacre of Gorman. And I think this is possibly the standout episode of the whole season, and maybe a standout episode for both seasons. And it was good to see that Cyril finally gets to confront Andor. After all, Andor pretty much inadvertently ruined his life. Not quite a fitting end to a great character, but it was really impactful nonetheless. In the last arc, the build-up to the events of Rogue One do seem like it's all convenience that needs to be put together. It's quite a slow burn from episode 1 all the way up to episode 6, but that final 3 episodes did feel that things needed to be tied together quite quickly, and I felt that it just needed to breathe a little bit more. I felt that in the earlier episodes, the massacre of Gorman should have taken place at that point, with the repercussion kind of having more time to breathe as the series went on. And we know that some characters must go because they're simply not involved in later Star Wars after this series. Some of which you expect, some of which that you're quite unprepared for. In episode 10, Make It Stop, which is the only episode to not actually feature Cassian, this is centred on the discovery of the Death Star secret and the demise of one of the best characters to ever even be in Star Wars, Luthen Rael. We get to see a little bit of his backstory and his journey into the rebellion. And here we see his willingness to do anything for the cause, including sacrificing himself. And I felt that this was the episode where the character of Kleya really excelled. You see how their relationship forms and grows, and it's really heartbreaking when she has to pull the plug on the man that pretty much brought her up. He's pretty much her father. And again, this was really impactful, but I didn't expect to see Luthen go 3 episodes to the end. I thought this was going to be done maybe in the last episode, so it kind of caught me off guard slightly, which was kind of the point, I guess. Luthen's a really important character and someone who was instrumental with the formation of the rebellion, and his actions throughout the series shows that he has to operate within that morally grey area. He has to fight evil with evil of his own. Sacrifices need to be made for the cause or the greater good. Shut it! I'd say that Luthen is almost like the enemy within, similar to Saw Gerrera to an extent. These men believe that they have to take extreme measures to bring about the downfall of the Empire. But as a prequel, we know where things are going, but the journey to get there was, I'd say, a bit bumpy. I wanted to see more of Saw Gerrera, as I did think that he was kind of underutilised in this series. At certain points in the season, there was too much going on, and I kind of felt that it was difficult to focus on one story thread over another one. To be honest, it probably makes me seem a bit stupid, but you know, that's for you to decide. But I did feel that there was a lack of focus in those early episodes. And as I said at the top of the video, this is most certainly a series of 2 halves. The first half being pretty boring, feeling almost like filler, like you're waiting for something to happen. But then the second half is as good as anything from season 1. Overall, I would say that season 1 was more consistent from start to finish than season 2, but season 2 did manage to hook me back in to the point where I wanted to keep on watching. Season 1 brilliantly gave us a look into the inner workings of the Empire, as well as life within the Empire. Season 2 showed us the Empire's true villainy. It was also great to see Ben Mendelsohn return as Orson Krennic, and I did like how he wasn't the main villain as such within the season, but was pulling the strings in the background. The scene in episode 11, Who Else Knows? Krennic shows that he's quite an intimidating character, and I believe the moment where he puts his finger on her head was something that Mendelsohn decided to do on his own, and it wasn't even in the script. Her reaction says it all. He's someone not to be trifled with, and he will do anything to succeed. He suffers no fools, and he looks down at those who he deems is beneath him. But we already knew that from Rogue One anyway. In the final episode, Kleya describes leaving for Yavin as a bitter ending, which I think is quite a fitting line as the finale to the series feels very bittersweet. There's no happy ending at the end of Andor because we know how the events are going to unfold beyond. The final episode serves to tie up the loose ends. It has to end where Rogue One begins, and there are no questions left unanswered whether you like the answers or not. What we do learn is that Cassian has a child with Bix, and this adds even more weight to his ultimate demise on Scarif when he dies retrieving the Death Star plans, and he dies never knowing that he has a child. I find this to be really tragic. In this day and age, the black and white approach of good versus evil is too one-dimensional. Layers have to be added to create more compelling stories, and I do feel that Andor does this really, really well. Andor as a whole succeeded where other Star Wars series failed. The Mandalorian Season 1 was excellent, but it's really let down by its second and third seasons, and I have to say that everything else has just been trash. Yet Andor, despite a slow start to Season 2, shows that Disney can produce great Star Wars content, and overall, I really enjoyed it. I was really glad that I went back to watch the second half of Season 2, because if I hadn't, I'd have simply just missed out. Those are just my initial thoughts on the series because I've literally just finished watching the last episode, but what are your thoughts? Please feel free to let us know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching this video. I've been Colm from the Critical Cinema Club, and I'll see you in the next one.